Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Preeti Kaur. Coming up in the next 1 hour, the Colorado Supreme Court disqualifies former President Donald Trump from ballot in the state's presidential primary next year over his role in the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol by his supporters. United Nations Security Council delays vote on a resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. Many UN members call for addressing humanitarian situation in Gaza, but US says resolution fails to sufficiently address Israeli security concerns. Venezuela and Guyana reached truce over territorial dispute, but their Latin American neighbors wonder how long the truce will hold. South Africa level series 1 each with a win in second ODI against India. Tony De Zorzi scores maiden ODI ton. The Colorado Supreme Court ruled on Tuesday that former President Donald Trump cannot be on the ballot in next year's state presidential election due to his involvement in the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol by his supporters. The 4-3 ruling from the Colorado Supreme Court makes Trump the first U.S. presidential candidate to be ruled ineligible for the presidency under a rarely used provision of the U.S. Constitution that prohibits officials from holding office if they have taken part in an insurrection or rebellion. The Colorado court said that the ruling is stayed until January 4th next year to allow for appeals. The former president says he plans to appeal the decision to the federal Supreme Court. Ira Spitzer gets us a detailed report from San Francisco.
In a 4-3 ruling, the Colorado Supreme Court decided that Donald Trump is ineligible to hold office again and ordered him removed from the state's upcoming primary ballot. However, the court stayed its ruling until at least January 4th to allow the former president time to appeal to the federal Supreme Court, which he plans to do. The Colorado court accepted the argument that Trump was disqualified as a result of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. That forbids people who have engaged in insurrection against the Constitution after having taken an oath to support it from holding office. Trump's supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021, in an attempt to stop Joe Biden's victory from being certified. One of the main questions the Colorado court considered was what role Trump played in the events of that day. Similar efforts in 3 other states to remove Trump from the ballot have so far been unsuccessful. However, if the Supreme Court affirms the Colorado ruling, Trump, who is currently the Republican frontrunner, could also face disqualification in other states. A spokesman for the Trump campaign lashed out at the ruling, calling it a left-wing scheme to interfere in the election. Ira Spitzer, reporting in San Francisco for DD India.
New York Governor Kathy Hochul authorized a commission to consider reparations for the state's role in perpetuating historic discrimination against African Americans, making New York the second U.S. state to launch such an effort. The state will not be required to follow the recommendations of the commission. New York lawmakers and civil rights activists who attended Hochul's signing ceremony said the New York Historical Society in Manhattan hailed it as a key step towards confronting the state's legacy of slavery and resulting racial gaps in wealth, employment, and criminal justice. The first U.S. state task force to research and develop reparation proposals for African Americans was launched in California in 2020. The United Nations Security Council has delayed a vote on a resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. Many UN members say the move is vital to address the humanitarian situation in the Palestinian enclave, but the United States has expressed concerns that the text fails to sufficiently address Israeli security concerns. William Denslow reports from UN headquarters in New York.
Tuesday was another frustrating day at the United Nations as diplomats continue to wrangle over the language in a draft resolution on the situation in Gaza. Earlier this week, we saw this draft presented that had a call for the urgent suspension of hostilities to allow safe and unhindered humanitarian access. But what we understand from reports is that the United States has had real issues with some of the language in this draft resolution and wants it watered down. It's understood that the draft included the phrase urgent steps towards a sustainable cessation of hostilities. It's understood that Washington has an issue with the reference to cessation of hostilities. So that has been a major stumbling block for diplomats at the United Nations. UN officials on Tuesday expressed the dire need for more humanitarian access into the Palestinian enclave. The UN estimates that around 85% of people in Gaza are now internally displaced. They warned that UN humanitarian groups working on the ground there are on the brink of collapse. UN officials say that the situation for civilians, they say that the impact has been unbearable for them, really imploring council members to come together and to pass a meaningful resolution to get more humanitarian access into the Gaza Strip and really try and see more protection of civilians going forward. We have heard on Tuesday from Robert Wood, who is the US Alternative Representative for Special Political Affairs. Now, he said to the press on Tuesday afternoon here in New York that efforts were continuing with other members of the Security Council to work on the draft text. He said, we'll see how discussions go. He says they're working on the issues and that we will see what happens. William Denslow in New York, reporting for DD India.
Meanwhile, the United States said that they are working with countries on the United Nations Security Council to resolve outstanding issues related to a draft resolution.
We are engaging constructively with our colleagues on the Security Council to resolve outstanding issues related to that resolution. We fully support addressing the humanitarian needs of the people of Gaza, as this resolution should set out to do, and we're working through these issues with other countries on the Security Council.
Iran-backed Houthi rebels have defied U.S. efforts to protect commercial ships in the Red Sea by promising more attacks on vessels. The group says it will only stop if Israel suspends its military campaign in Gaza. Nick Harper gets us the details from Washington.
The increase in attacks in the Red Sea has led the United States to create a multinational naval operation to try and counter the barrage of missiles and drones coming from the Houthis based in Yemen. The fear is the continued attacks on commercial vessels spread the current Israel-Hamas conflict further into the wider region. US Secretary of State Lloyd Austin announced the joint naval operation while in Bahrain, saying it was an international challenge that demands collective action. It's been nicknamed Operation Prosperity Guardian, with at least 9 other countries helping to take part in the patrols, including Bahrain, Canada, France and Italy. But despite that, the Houthis say attacks will continue, perhaps as often as every 12 hours, until Israel ends its fight against Hamas. The group also says more food and medicine needs to get to Palestinians in Gaza. The attacks have prompted some companies, including oil giant BP, to reroute their vessels away from the Red Sea, opting for routes that involve longer journey times and therefore increased costs. Oil prices have risen as a result of the news. About 12% of the world's shipping trade passes through the Suez Canal and the Red Sea each year. Nick Harper in Washington, reporting for DD India.
The United Nations have also warned of negative impact on shipping costs and eventually leading to higher prices of consumer goods if disruptions in Suez Canal continues.
If you have systematically higher shipping costs for manufactured goods, the consumer goods that you and I buy in the shop, it takes many months to really translate into higher prices. But it will come. So if this situation continues, it will have a bearing also on the prices we pay in the shop for our consumer goods.
Guinea government has warned people to brace for power cuts as the country grapples with the aftermath of a deadly explosion at an oil terminal in the capital Conakry that destroyed fuel tanks and forced hundreds of people to flee damaged homes. 14 people were killed and 190 were injured in the blast at the West African nation's main oil terminal, which rocked the Kowloon district in downtown Conakry. In its first update on the extent of the damage to the terminal, the government said 13 fuel tanks were out of service, while 5 tanks were unaffected. The extent of the fallout from the blast is not yet clear, or whether mining operations will be affected. A territorial dispute in a corner of Latin America has sparked international alarm in recent weeks. There is now relief that Venezuela and Guyana have reached a truce, but their Latin American neighbors have been wondering how long will it hold. DD India's Latin American correspondent Mary Trini Mena reports more on this.
This was the handshake that signaled compromise. A pledge not to use force to resolve a dispute going back 100 years. The territory in question, the Essequibo, in the Amazon jungle, which counts for 2/3 of modern-day Guyana.
Agreed that Guyana and Venezuela, directly or indirectly, will not threaten or use force against one another in any circumstances, including those consequential to any existing controversies between the two states.
The border dispute began in the late 1800s when Guyana, a former British colony, established its borders. Ever since then, Venezuela has contested the legality of Guyana's boundaries. The Geneva Agreement of 1966 sought to settle the conflict.
El Acuerdo de Ginebra se firmó ese año.
The Geneva Agreement was signed that year, which sets out a practical and equitable agreement between the parties. Why has it not been solved? Because Guyana has always refused to negotiate.
In 2018, Guyana went further and took the dispute to the International Court of Justice, a court Venezuela doesn't recognize. Over the last decade, Guyana's oil output and revenues have grown dramatically. By contrast, Venezuela sank deeper into economic crisis. Caracas asserted its territorial claim more aggressively. In December, Venezuela held a referendum to approve the creation of a new Venezuelan state. Just days after the vote, President Maduro presented a new map adding the Essequibo, and he ordered state-owned companies to drill for oil and gas in the disputed region.
Venezuela is talking about granting concessions for claimed areas that are mostly offshore, which is fundamentally where the problem lies. What is difficult is to find companies interested in an area that is in dispute.
The territorial dispute has alarmed Venezuela's neighbors, prompting Brazil to take a lead in negotiations. Some analysts say President Maduro is trying to create a distraction from his own economic problems and stroke national unity.
Even though I believe it's highly unlikely that this could end in a war or an armed conflict, you can't rule it out when a government is using and waving the flag of patriotism and nationalism in an effort to unite a country behind itself.
Which is why many fear the truce will not hold. For now, Venezuela is getting ready for a new meeting with Guyana over the Essequibo and upcoming presidential elections, both in 2024. In Caracas, Mary Trini Mena, reporting for DD India.
Brazilian First Lady Rosângela Lula da Silva said on Tuesday that she will sue Elon Musk-owned social media platform X after having her account hacked last week. The alleged hacker entered her account on December 11th and posted several messages, including insults against the First Lady and President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. She also called on Brazil to regulate social media platforms, saying they must be held accountable for their users' actions. Lula agreed that social media regulation was needed globally, but voiced his concerns around the complexities of the issue. Texas Governor Greg Abbott signed a law allowing state law enforcement to arrest people suspected of crossing the U.S.-Mexico border illegally, giving local officers powers long delegated to the U.S. government in a move likely to trigger legal challenges. The law will take effect in March and create a new state crime for illegal entry or re-entry into Texas, with penalties ranging from 180 days in jail to 20 years in prison. Texas magistrate judges will be required to order migrants to return to Mexico, with up to 20-year sentences for those who refuse to comply. Attorney Vicky Giambra, legal and advocacy director of the nonprofit Houston Immigration Legal Services Collaborative, said the law could lead to racial discrimination. Abbott also signed a bill that would devote $1.5 billion to border wall construction and other operations. We're heading for a short break. You're watching DD India News Hour, but after the break, Chinese Premier Li Keqiang and Russian Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin meet in Beijing to discuss bilateral relations and trade and agriculture cooperation. Stay with us to get the details. Braving sub-zero conditions, rescuers face an uphill task finding and treating survivors of the earthquake that hit remote area in China's northwestern Gansu province. We will also tell you ahead about elections in the Democratic Republic of Congo.
In a world that never stops, where information shapes our reality, one app stands out, helps you stay ahead of time. Introducing the DD India app, your gateway to a world of news right at your fingertips. Your most trusted source of news goes global, goes digital. Explore a world of options, top stories, live updates, in-depth analysis, and more. Stay informed wherever you are. Real-time alerts keep you ahead of the curve always. The DD India app, connecting you to the world, one story at a time. Download now and explore the world of knowledge, insights, and authentic.
Welcome back after the break. You're watching DD India News Hour. Let's get you more international updates. As Singapore's COVID cases continue to rise, the country's health ministry said that it strongly encourages people to wear a face mask even if they're not ill, particularly in crowded places or when visiting vulnerable people. Singapore Health Ministry said on December 15th that the estimated number of COVID cases increased to 56,043 between December 3rd to 9th, a whopping 75% jump as compared with 32,035 cases in the previous week. DD India correspondent Andrew Wood joins us from Macau for more on the record COVID cases in Singapore. Andrew, good morning. Do we know more about what's behind this surge?
Well, the scientists and the doctors in Singapore say that most of the cases are of a sublineage of COVID, BA2.86. In particular, the sublineage is the JN.1. Now, the scientists say that there's no reason to suspect at the moment that this particular sublineage is more transmissible. In other words, it's easier for people to give COVID to each other, that this sublineage is any more transmissible than any other varieties of COVID. But it is still rather an arresting, enormous jump in the number of cases, as you say, from about 32,000 to about 56,000. The Singaporean authorities are opening a special facility in a big exhibition hall near the airport. The number of people in intensive care as a result of COVID has risen, but it's a very small number. It's only gone up from something like 4 cases to 9 cases at the moment.
All right, Andrew, also let us know what are specific areas of public life which the government advisory covers.
Well, masks are back. I mean, in some cases, in some respects in Asia, masks never really went away because a lot of people continued to wear them after COVID, either to protect people from normal colds and flus or because they were worried about what might happen, whether there'd be a resurgence of COVID. But basically, it seems that if you're a minor case, you can probably be diagnosed by your local primary care doctor, or you need to sort of talk to the Ministry of Health if you have a more serious case.
All right, Andrew, a quick word on the severity of this variant, because you tell us that though masks are back and scientists are still are not very sure about how serious or for that matter how grave is the situation in Singapore. Can we get more details on the transmissibility of this variant and what is the severity of this variant?
Well, at the moment, there's, as they say, the doctors and the scientists say there are no grounds to believe that this particular variant is any more transmissible than other variants. And they're looking for a reason why there's been this sudden surge in cases. It could probably be, well, I mean, one possibility is just because as all of the restrictions, the measures that people had been taking, people were on the whole thinking that COVID was over, that there was no need, governments and people thinking there's no need to take extra precautions anymore. And so it's suddenly come from nowhere.
All right, Andrew, we leave it here. Thank you for joining in with those details. Braving sub-zero conditions, rescuers faced an uphill task on Wednesday, finding and treating survivors of the earthquake that hit remote areas in China's northwestern Gansu province. Recovery has been challenged by the powerful cold snap that gripped most of China since last week. Temperatures around the quake epicenter fell to around -15 degrees Celsius on Tuesday as rescuers continued their work. Researchers claim that people trapped under the rubble exposed to -10 degrees Celsius conditions without help run the risk of developing hypothermia, which could be fatal. In Gansu, 113 people are reported found dead as of 9 a.m. on Wednesday, and 782 were injured. The death toll in Qinghai rose to 18, with 198 injured as of 5:30 a.m. on Wednesday. 78 people have been rescued in Gansu. Chinese Premier Li Keqiang and Russian Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin met in Beijing, where it was agreed that both sides should jointly safeguard energy security and ensure a safe and stable industrial chain and supply chain. The meeting took place on the first of the two-day visit by Mishustin to China's capital, where a memorandum of understanding to cooperate in the film and advertising was also signed. They pledged joint efforts to uphold the energy security of both the nations, bolster connectivity and strengthen people-to-people exchanges and cooperation. United Nations officials have called on North Korea to comply with international law after it launched ballistic missiles over the weekend. At a briefing on Tuesday, members of the UN Security Council urged Pyongyang to commit to denuclearization, but Russia and China criticized fellow members for being one-sided. Sally Patterson reports from New York, where the UN is headquartered.
North Korea now has weapons capable of reaching most points on Earth. That was the stark warning from UN Assistant Secretary General for the Middle East, Asia and the Pacific, Mohammed Khalid Kyari, on Tuesday. Pyongyang's intercontinental ballistic missile, launched on December 18th, flew around 1,000 kilometers before falling into the sea. Kyari said North Korea did not issue any warnings before the launch, calling that a serious risk to aviation and maritime traffic. He said it was imperative to de-escalate the situation on the Korean peninsula and urged Pyongyang to engage in diplomacy, not isolation. Several UN Security Council members called for North Korea to reopen lines of communication and to abandon its nuclear and ballistic missiles programs. The US's alternate permanent representative, Robert Wood, said every council member needed to condemn the missile launches and meaningfully hold Pyongyang to account. He called on Russia and China to join the rest of the council in doing so. while the UK accused those two countries of shielding their ally. But Russia accused the Council of being one-sided and, along with China, condemned the US's so-called show of force in the region. Sally Patterson in New York, reporting for DD India.
Voters in the Democratic Republic of Congo are going to polls to elect a new president, MPs and local councillors in an election that's being held in the midst of armed conflict in the east of the country. Authorities say that voters in 3 territories will not be able to participate in the polls that open today. DD India's correspondent Chris Ochamaringa has more from Kinshasa.
Wednesday's election in the Democratic Republic of Congo is considered to be crucial for consolidating democracy in this vast country that has been plagued by conflict for close to 3 decades. The incumbent president, Felix Tshisekedi, is among the front-runners in a crowded field of 19 candidates. He has promised to end the armed conflicts, unite the country, and lead it on the path of prosperity. But his critics have accused him of making promises that he doesn't deliver. The president's main challengers are Moise Katumbi, a wealthy businessman, Martin Fayulu, a former presidential candidate, and the 2018 Nobel Peace Prize winner, Dr. Denis Mukwege. Nearly 44 million people have been registered to vote in this year's polls. But more than 1 million Congolese living in 3 territories racked by conflict will not be able to participate in the elections. The UN says there are more than 120 militia groups fighting over land and the control of minerals in eastern DRC. The conflict has kept millions of Congolese in poverty. They hope the outcome of these elections will turn around their fortunes. Chris Ochamaringa in Kinshasa for DD India.
New Zealand's Prime Minister Christopher Luxon said on Wednesday that he would look into the benefits of joining a part of the AUKUS Defence Pact that focuses on shared military technology. Luxon, who is visiting Australia on his first official trip as Prime Minister, also reiterated New Zealand's nuclear-free stance, which he said was non-negotiable, adding that the AUKUS weapons development and procurement project between the US, Britain and Australia would help ensure peace and stability in the Pacific region. New Zealand is not a party to the trilateral pact, though the US has said the door was open for it to engage on AUKUS.
Australian diplomatic and public support.
More protesters joined the 3rd week of demonstrations in Bratislava against government plans to fast-track criminal law reforms that include scrapping a special prosecutor's office focused on corruption. The European Commission has warned it will take action against Slovakia if it violates EU laws. Fico, a 4-time premier who resigned in 2018 amid mass protests against corruption that followed the murder of an investigative journalist, has accused the special prosecutor's office of being politically motivated and has said its actions violated human rights. The government had sought to enact the legislation by Christmas, but government officials have said a vote could shift to January. Hundreds of Serbian opposition supporters rallied outside the State Election Commission in Belgrade as opposition leaders went on hunger strike in the commission headquarters. Demonstrators demanded the recent snap parliamentary election be rerun amid accusations of voter registration fraud, bribery and result rigging. An international monitoring commission said the country's ruling Serbian Progressive Party had gained an unfair advantage in the elections through media bias and irregularities such as vote buying. The populist SNS won 46.72% of the votes in Sunday's elections. The Serbia Against Violence Alliance came second with 23.56% of the votes, and the Socialist Party of Serbia third with 6.56%. Let's take a look at other stories making it to the headlines from across the world. California's State Water Resources Control Board on Tuesday cleared the regulation for widespread use of advanced filtration and treatment facilities designed to convert sewage waste into pure drinking water that can be pumped directly into systems feeding millions of household taps. Major automakers, including General Motors, Toyota and Volkswagen, opposed a bid by U.S. auto safety regulators to recall 52 million airbag inflators produced by auto suppliers ARC Automotive and Delphi Automotive. Officials with the U.S. National Highway Traffic Safety Administration backed their claims, saying the airbags may rupture and send metal fragments flying. K-pop star G-Dragon has been cleared of allegations of illegal drug use by South Korean police, according to media reports, after failing to get testimonies in support of the charges. Police had been investigating the singer and rapper, whose given name is Kwon Ji-young, amid an ongoing crackdown on illegal drugs by the government. Despite a volcanic eruption late on Monday on the Reykjanes Peninsula, Iceland's Keflavik International Airport was functional as usual amid warning of potential gas pollution in the area of Reykjavik late on Tuesday or Wednesday morning. Tourists expressed a mixture of fascination and concern but felt reassured by the news of the intensity of the eruption dropping. Peruvian authorities seized 4,001 live turtle specimens bound for Indonesia after discovering anomalies in a shipment's documentation, according to the information from the National Forestry and Wildlife Service. Following the seizure, all the animals were handed over in temporary custody to an authorized breeding center in Lima. You're watching DD India News Hour. We're heading for a short break. But after the break, Prime Minister Modi invites people to share ideas for Mann Ki Baat to be broadcast on the eve of New Year. Digital payments in India record a whopping rise, with UPI being major driving force in the growth of digital payments. Tamil Nadu continues to reel under devastating aftermath of floods, even as rescue and relief operations continue. A central assessment team to visit the state on Wednesday.
India that invents. India that innovates. India that excites. India that invites. Land of possibilities. Teeming with opportunities. Watch India Ideas each Thursday, 8 p.m. only on DD India.
Welcome back after the break. You're watching DD India News Hour, and I'm Preeti. A quick relook at the top stories once again. The Colorado Supreme Court disqualifies former President Donald Trump from ballot in the state's presidential primary next year over his role in the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol by his supporters. United Nations Security Council delays vote on a resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. Many UN members call for addressing humanitarian situation in Gaza, but US says resolution fails to sufficiently address Israeli security concerns. Venezuela and Guyana reached truce over territorial dispute, but their Latin American neighbors wonder how long the truce will hold. South Africa leveled the series 1-1 with the win in second ODI against India. Tony De Zorzi scores maiden ODI ton. Let's take a look at the Parliament proceedings lined up for the day today. In Lok Sabha, the lower house of Parliament, Information and Broadcasting Minister Anurag Singh Thakur will move the Press and Registration of Periodicals Bill 2023 for consideration and passage. The bill aims to provide for press and registration of periodicals. Also, Law and Justice Minister Arjun Ram Meghwal will move the Chief Election Commissioner and other election commissioners' appointment, conditions of service and terms of office Bill 2023 for consideration and passage. Telecom and Railways Minister Ashwini Vaishnav will move the Telecommunications Bill 2023 for consideration. In Rajya Sabha, the upper house of Parliament, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman will move the Central Goods and Services Tax Second Amendment Bill 2023 and the Provisional Collection of Taxes Bill 2023. Our correspondent Vikas Sarthi is joining us for more on the winter session of the Parliament. Vikas, we've just given a broad outline of the key bills that will be taken up in both the Houses of Parliament. Let us hear more from you. How do we expect the day to be there in Parliament, given the stance of the opposition, and also very quickly get us a quick highlight of the bills that will be taken up in both the houses today?
Right, Preeti, in the Lok Sabha, first of all, the discussion on Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita and two connected bills will continue today, and we expect that Home Minister will give a detailed reply on all the issues raised by Member of Parliament. Though we saw yesterday that after suspension of 49 opposition MPs from Lok Sabha, the discussion duration has been reduced since earlier. More than 15 hours have been allotted for this particular discussion, but now a very few number of leaders other than the ruling BJP party are there to participate in this very important legislation. Though when this bill was introduced in Parliament in August, there was a demand that it should be sent to a standing committee of Home Ministry. That demand was accepted by the government. It was sent to the standing committee, and several important inputs have been taken from the members. But again, such an important legislation, and opposition is not participating in the debate. So after the passage of Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, other important bills will also be taken up. You just mentioned that telecommunications amendment bill will be moved by communications minister, and this bill is also very important for the end user of social media platforms. It will provide that all those apps, calling apps and messaging apps, which are based on internet, will now be included in the definition of telecommunication. So earlier there was a lack of legislation on that aspect. So this bill will provide that those apps are also ruled by certain provisions. And apart from it, another important bill you just mentioned, that which is related to the appointments of Chief Election Commissioner and other election commissioners. It will provide that there will be a high power committee of Prime Minister, Union Minister and Leader of Opposition, which will decide the candidature of Chief Election Commissioner and other election commissions. There was a vacuum, Preeti, since the existing rules or existing guidelines were in fact quashed by the Supreme Court on a PIL, and meanwhile, as an interim measure, it was provided that Chief Justice of India will also be a part of this panel. Now, this bill has made it clear that any decision will be taken by legislature itself, and there will be no role of judiciary in appointment. So this is also a very important bill. But first of all, Lok Sabha will take up the agenda which was continuing yesterday, Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita. A number of MPs have given their input and their point of view on this particular bill. And once the Lok Sabha starts functioning, we expect that after the question hour and 0 hour, these bills will be taken up for further discussion.
All right, Vikas, also, what do you make of the standoff between the opposition and the government? Because yesterday we saw record suspensions being made, and also given that the winter session is in the last leg of its functioning, let us get more from you as to how do you evaluate the session so far, and also what do you make of the standoff between the opposition and the government?
Right, Preeti. So the first week was very productive, and there was a very important discussion took place in both the houses. But on the incident of security breach, now opposition has been obstructing the proceedings in both the houses, and in both the houses, chair reminded opposition that it is a matter of scrutiny, but it is a prerogative of parliamentary secretariat. Demanding that government should make a statement on this security breach is not appropriate. In the past, such kinds of incidents also took place, and at that point in time also, chair decided that what should be the improvement in the security of parliament. This is not a matter of politics, and opposition MP should give their vital inputs, their suggestions, but stalling the proceedings in both the houses is not correct. Despite the frequent reminders, opposition MPs created ruckus, and we have seen that there was a number of suspension. Yesterday also 49 MPs were suspended since they brought placard and they tried to went into the will. And despite the repeated warnings, when they didn't when they didn't participate in the proceedings and tried to obstruct the proceedings, then certainly chair decided that for the smooth functioning and passage of such important bills, these 49 MPs should be suspended for the remaining part of the winter session.
All right, thank you, Vikas, for joining in with those details. Let's turn focus to other updates from the country now. Health Minister of the southern Indian state of Kerala, Veena George, said that there is no need to worry even though the cases of COVID are increasing in the state. Kerala witnessed an increase in the number of COVID cases in the month of November itself. Accordingly, the Health Department of Kerala government had taken measures and guidelines were also issued. The State Medical Officers Conference also instructed to take action. As heavy rains continue to lash parts of southern Indian state of Tamil Nadu, State Chief Minister appealed to the central government for assistance in light of the devastating impact caused by heavy rainfall. Indian Army and Indian Air Force helicopters conducted relief operations, airdropping over 10 tons of essential supplies. They have successfully evacuated stranded individuals, including women and children, from isolated areas and rooftops. Rescue boats are taking several sorties to take those who are in the floods to shelters. Tragically, the floods have claimed the lives of 10 individuals till now. A central assessment team is set to visit the state on Wednesday to evaluate the extent of the flood's impact on the affected areas. DD India correspondent Anbarasan joins us from Tirunelveli in Tamil Nadu. Anbarasan, let us get a sense of what is the current situation right now. We tell our viewers that still the state is witnessing rainfall.
After the unprecedented rain in the southern districts of Tamil Nadu, the water has been receded most of parts of the Tirunelveli and Tuticorin district. Now we are at the Tamrabarani river banks, and water level has significantly receded here. And the train services and also the Tuticorin airport services has been resumed after 4 days. And also the particularly Vande Bharat train and also Chennai Kanyakumari train and all today actually suspended, and the schools and colleges has been also given a holiday by the district administration, and the casualty report around 7 people and 3 people in both Tirunelveli and Tuticorin district has been reported. And Chief Minister M.K. Stalin had met Prime Minister Narendra Modi yesterday and requested relief and rescue assistance, and also he given a he asked about 2,000 crore relief fund to the interim rescue works, and also the state administration as in full swing to rescue and relief operation. Today the central assessment team which is planning to visit the flood affected areas in the Tuticorin district, particularly the Sri Vaikundam area where the stranded people, passenger has been evacuated from there, and they will be sending to Chennai via Vanji Maniachi railway station, and they will be reaching Chennai at around this afternoon. And continuous relief and rescue work is on full swing, and the NDRF, SDRF team all are in full work, and still people are in relief camps, and around 40 lakh people in both Tirunelveli and Tuticorin district has been affected due to this, and electricity and the basic needs has been resumed after 4 days. And the current situation is continuously and slowly in a normal back, and the river banks of Tamrabarani residential areas only right now affected, and they also, that area also, people are getting back to normal due to the relief work done by the state and central forces.
All right, Anbarasan, you tell us that the situation is improving a little and life is slowly coming back to normalcy. But get us a sense of the medical arrangements, the medical facilities which are presently there in the state, because after floods, generally spread of epidemic is witnessed and a number of health hazards is witnessed. Get us more as to how well equipped are the medical facilities there in Tamil Nadu.
After this rain effect in these 4 districts, the state administration and also central forces get medical and food supplies from across district, and also from Nagpur also the helicopter deployed here for giving a rescue and also relief work, and food has been airdropped to the people in the railway station and who are stranded in their houses. Particularly the medical assistance across from Chennai and also various parts of neighboring states, also the medicine and all taken back and given to this via helicopter, and also Indian Air Force given MiG-27 via that also they given a medical assistance and also food to the people in this affected areas.
All right, Doordarshan, thank you so much for joining in with those details. Let's turn focus to other news now. Across India, a transformative movement is taking roots. The Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra, the largest ever outreach initiative of the Government of India, is bringing the promise of empowerment and a brighter future to the doorsteps of the Indians. In this series, the Yatra, or the journey, reached the Balyan Panchayat of Udhampur in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. The event was held at Sant Ishwar Bharatiya Vidya Mandir School, where locals welcomed the van and listened to the message of Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his vision of making India a developed nation by 2047. Government departments set up stalls to advertise various welfare schemes. Resource persons shared information about the government schemes and visitors. The Indian government's flagship program, Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra, is being undertaken across the country with an aim to attain saturation of government schemes by ensuring that the benefits of the schemes reach the intended beneficiaries in a time-bound manner. The Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra travels through the Anantapur district of South Indian state of Andhra Pradesh. As part of the program, short films of the schemes implemented by the central government were shown to the public through campaign vehicle. Similarly, the officials of the respective departments explained to the people about the central government schemes. Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra pledge was also taken during the event. Falling in line with India's Viksit Bharat campaign, Department of Investment and Public Asset Management under Finance Ministry has prioritized value creation in central public sector enterprises. This has enabled asset creation through trust for investors, value creation in CPSEs prioritized through balanced capital management policy, and planning disinvestment transactions at right price and right time without value erosion. Since the announcement of the new PSE policy in January 2012, Nifty 50 and BSE Sensex have registered a rise of 44% and 40.29% respectively, whereas the NSE CPSE and BSE CPSE indices have outperformed with a big margin, with returns of 160.49% and 128.66% respectively till November this year. Up next, we take a look at other stories making it to the headlines from across India. Sashastra Seema Bal is commemorating its 60th raising day today with the commitment to a safe, secure and prosperous India. SSB is a border guarding force of India which guards the nation's border with Nepal and Bhutan. In the aftermath of the 1962 India-China war, it was felt that the borders of India should need an additional force along with the tri-forces. As per the Global TB Report 2023 published by the WHO, the estimated number of drug-resistant tuberculosis in India has reduced by 21% from 140,000 in 2015 to 100,000 in 2022. The government has scaled up the availability of molecular diagnostic facilities, and thereby there has been an increase in the proportion of TB patients being screened for the presence of drug resistance. In India, the digital payments have significantly increased in the recent years. The total digital payment transactions volume increased from 2,071 crore in the financial year 2017-18 to 13,462 crore in the financial year 2022-23. UPI is one of the leading contributors in the increase of digital payments in India. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has invited people to share their ideas and suggestions for his program Mann Ki Baat, which will be broadcast on 31st of December on DD India. India's CRPF has organized the local Football Cup 2023 in the Indian Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir in collaboration with the J&K Sports Council. A short break ahead on DD India News Hour, but when you come back, we'll get you details about what LSE professor has to say about reforms and what's driving India's economic engine towards sustainable growth. UK government says a 14th round of negotiations with India on a free trade deal will take place next month. Stay with us as we get you an update on the latest negotiations. It was raining money at IPL 2024 auction. Aussie duo of Mitchell Starc and Pat Cummins make the biggest splash, while Indian uncapped players also fetch good money. Welcome back after the break. You're watching DD India News Hour and I'm Preeti. Let's get to more international updates. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said on Tuesday that the military had asked for an additional 450,000 to 500,000 people to be mobilized into the army. At a news conference in Kyiv, the Ukrainian leader said that his commanders were due to discuss this very sensitive issue of mobilization and that Parliament would then consider it. Zelensky said that conducting a mobilization at such a scale would require additional financing.
Their position on the General Staff meeting was that they proposed to mobilize an additional 450,000 to 500,000 people. This is a very serious number, and I said that I need more arguments to support this idea. This is a question about people, about justice, about defense capabilities, and a financial question.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky also said that he was confident the U.S. would not betray his country by withholding crucial wartime funding as it fights off a Russian invasion. He also said he expected the European Union to approve a €50 billion aid package soon.
We are working very hard on this, and I'm certain the United States of America will not betray us. And that on which we agreed in the United States will be fulfilled completely. Regarding the European Union, well, everyone played their big cards, and we reached one victory regarding the EU's €50 billion. I'm sure that we have already achieved all of this.
Russia on Tuesday launched its fifth air attack this month, targeting Kyiv, with Ukraine's air defense systems destroying all weapons on approach to the Ukrainian capital. Kyiv's military said early on Wednesday most of southeastern Ukraine remained under air raid alerts. Ukraine's Air Force said that Kharkiv, Dnipropetrovsk and Kirovohrad regions were under attack threat. Let's get to business updates now. Asian stocks continue to rise during the early trading sessions on Wednesday, extending Tuesday's Wall Street rally. India's benchmark equity indices Sensex and Nifty scaled new peaks as they opened at fresh record highs on Wednesday. At 9:15 a.m., the Sensex was up 351.89 points or 0.49% at 71,789.08, and Nifty was up 105.4 points or 0.49% at 21,558.5. Shares also rose at the opening sessions in South Korea and Japan. Futures for Hong Kong pointed to solid gains in early trading. The surge is being triggered amid several global cues, including rate cuts by the Fed and other major central banks. But markets are waiting for data readouts from the U.S., including Wednesday's existing home sales, Thursday's third-quarter gross domestic product print, and Friday's durable goods orders and personal consumption expenditures. According to a recent IMF report, India is projected to contribute more than 16% to global growth and has emerged as one of the star performers. Jessica Taneja spoke with Robin Burgess, economic professor at the London School of Economics, about potential reforms and what's driving India's economic engine towards sustainable growth.
How do you look at India's economic growth in the future? It's going to be the third largest economy. It's projected to become the third largest economy. It's still pacing. And what more do you think India needs to do to have more reforms? It already expressed that there have to be certain multilateral institutions that need reformation, including the United Nations, in order to be able to address the needs of the emerging economy, aka the global south as well. India has taken a stand at that point, but with its economic engines now working in full capacity, what do you think would aid that growth?
I think there's a couple of broad areas. One is this very simple transition from agriculture into services and manufacturing. And that is obviously a source of growth because people become more productive. But I think the bigger factor is once they move out of agriculture into some form of firm, India has been successful in having a huge mass of small firms and then some big firms. And there's going to be a need for sort of some of those small firms to be encouraged to grow to become bigger firms. And that sort of, people talk about infrastructure, they talk about regulation, but that sort of, I guess, encouragement of entrepreneurship is going to be a big factor.
The UK government says a 14th round of negotiations with India on a free trade deal will take place next month, that is January 2024. Britain's Parliament has received an update on the latest negotiations as Ollie Barrett reports from London. Let's watch it.
The update comes in the form of a written ministerial statement from Greg Hands, who is Minister of State for Trade Policy. He says the 13th round of free trade agreement talks wrapped up on the 15th of December, with negotiations having taken place in London and in Delhi in what is described as a hybrid fashion. The minister says that a comprehensive and ambitious FTA remains the goal, and he insists that a balanced deal can strengthen the economic links between London and India. Greg Hans's update says that the 13th round of talks focused on issues around goods, services and investment, and that the UK government, in his words, will not compromise on things like environmental, animal welfare, food and labour protections. And his statement stresses that there are no plans to change our immigration policy. The minister has confirmed that the next round of FTA talks will start in January 2024. Ollie Barrett in London, reporting for DD India.
All right, let's turn focus to sports now. We'll get you more on the IPL auction, ODI World Cup performers and uncapped Indians in big demand at IPL 2024 auction. Australia's Mitchell Starc became the most expensive player ever to be sold at the IPL auction when Kolkata Knight Riders acquired the Pacers' services. Australian captain Pat Cummins went to Sunrisers Hyderabad for a whopping 20.5 crore. South Africa pulled level in the 3-match ODI series against India with an 8-wicket win at St. George's Oval. South Africa bundled out India for a total of 211 runs in 46.2 overs before managing to chase down the target in 42.3 overs. All right, that's it in this edition of DD India News Hour, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X and also Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Preeti Kaur signing off, and from all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.